Namaskar everyone and welcome to the Gita Satsang for today. Let us start with the Shlok Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतः क्लेशनाशाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः। रामानुजदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकम्। यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्म व्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये। So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us start our topic for today. So in the previous satsang, we had seen up to the 18th shloka. Today we are going to see the 19th shloka of the 4th chapter. So in this, Krishna is continuing to talk and explain to Arjuna about how wise people perform their actions. So in the 19th shloka, he says, Yasya sarve samarambhaha kama sankalpavarjitaha jnanagni-dagdha karmanam tamahu panditam buddha. The enlightened sages, Buddha, the enlightened sages, call those persons wise. Enlightened sages are called, they are calling certain persons wise. Which persons? Whose every action is free from the desire for material pleasures, and those who have burnt the reactions of work in the fire of jnana, of divine knowledge. So here there are two categories of people who are being talked about. One is, who are these wise persons? And second is, who is calling them wise? The enlightened sages. So those persons are wise whose actions are free from desire for material pleasures and who have burned the reactions of work in Jnanagni. So somebody who does all their karma. Now for whom these reactions will get burnt away? Any person who does all his karma without these two things. The first thing is, such a person does not have kama. Kama is any type of a desire for enjoyment. And sankalpa. Sankalpa, normally we use this word to mean like taking a resolve, making a decision, right? So here, however, the idea conveyed by this word sankalpa in this context is the idea, the thought that this body is Atma. That is what is called as, what is referred to as sankalpa. So somebody who does any action, all his actions, without any kind of desire and without the idea that the body is the Atma, such a person has true jnana. So if somebody is doing actions with kama, somebody is doing actions with the idea that this sharira is the same as the Atma and the two are one and the same, then such a person doesn't have jnana. Such a person who does all actions without desire and with the correct understanding that body and Atma are different from each other, such a person has true jnana. Now, when such a person is doing his karmas, because he is doing it without desire, because he is doing it with the idea that the Atma and Sharira are different from each other, because he is doing it with the bhava that the Lord is getting it done through him, such a person's papa punya get burned. What is it that is burning the papa punya? The jnana which this person has. Now, he is doing karma, he is doing actions along with jnana. So that jnana part of his karma yoga ensures that all the papa punya get burnt. Where do these papa punya come from? Normally, whenever we do any action, we are bound to accumulate papa and punya. If we do good actions, we are going to get punya. If we do bad actions, we are going to get papa. Right? Papa and punya are an outcome of our actions. So any karma that we do, we will accumulate papa and punya based on what type of karma we are doing. But if you do the karma along with the jnana part, then your actions are no longer just karma, they become karma yoga. This is what we have already seen in previous satsangs. So for a person who does all his actions with jnana combined in it, such a person does not accumulate papa punya. That jnana in his actions burns off all the papa punya that may come. So when papa punya gets destroyed, such a person does not experience sukha and dukkha. What is this sukha and dukkha? It is that constant, wave on which we are, that we enjoy, we feel happy for some time, we experience unhappiness for most of the time. So we keep going up and down like the wave. So sometimes we are high because we are having all good things happening to us, or rather we feel good about things happening to us, and then we experience pain and we experience sorrow. So if our papa punya get destroyed, there is no question of any sukha dukkha remaining. Whenever we have done lot of when we have a lot of papa accumulated, to get rid of that papa, we experience dukkha. When we have lot of punya accumulated, to experience and finish off that punya, we have an experience of sukha. So if papa punya is destroyed, then there is no accumulation there of papa punya. So there is no this differentiation that we have, that this is sukha, this is dukkha. So we will then reach that samatva dasha. Now, when we don't have sukha dukkha, we are not caught up in these emotions of, what gives me happiness, what gives me sorrow, and all. That means, in essence, we no longer have any desire, any liking, and any dislike. So there is no raga, there is no dvesha. When there is no raga and no dvesha, there is also no bhaya and no krodha. When we have desires and we want things to happen a particular way, when we are hanging on to that sentiment very strongly, when we have raga, then at that time we are worried. There is always a chance for anxiety, bhaya to come into the picture. Because if things don't go the way I want them to go, then I'm going to be anxious about that. Similarly, if I have very strong dislikes and something happens so that this dislike gets activated, then what happens? I get into this feeling of krodha, which is anger. So you can see how this is a vicious cycle. If there is papa punya, there will be sukha dukkha. When there is sukha dukkha, there will also be raga dvesha. When there is raga dvesha, there will definitely be bhaya krodha. So we are always stuck up in this vicious cycle. So what's the way to get out of this cycle is explained in this shloka by Krishna. So he says, if you destroy the papa punya, then there is no sukha dukkha. Then there is no raga dvesha. And because of that, there is no bhaya krodha. So how do you do this destruction of papa punya? By using jnana in combination with karma. A person who is able to do this successfully is blessed to go to the next stage where he develops bhakti for the Lord. So right now, whatever we think we have as bhakti for the Lord, yes, it is bhakti to some extent, but we are just at the, not even the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? So we have much further to go. And what is the path to get there? To do all our karma, to do all our actions with jnana combined, with the idea that I am doing this not for my own pleasure, but for the Lord's pleasure. I don't want any fruit out of this. I have no expectation of anything to come to me from this. If I do karma like this, without expecting the fruit of that action, if I do karmas with the correct idea that the body and Atma are different, then my karma doesn't remain mere karma. If I do karma with expectation of phala, if I do karma with the idea that body is Atma, then it is just karma. It is only action. It is not karma yoga. But if I give up these two things, I don't have expectation of the fruit and I don't have the wrong idea that body is Atma, then that karma becomes karma yoga. And when we practice karma yoga in this manner, that is, we combine karma and jnana, then this karma yoga gives the same benefit as someone who is practicing jnana yoga. We will see in detail in further chapters where Krishna will explain what exactly is this jnana yoga. But we've had a glimpse of it when we talked about these things in the second and third chapters briefly. So there we said that jnana yoga means somebody who is a jnana yogi has to withdraw all his senses and to be able and he has to be able to focus everything only on the Lord. So that is Jnana Yoga, and that is what Arjuna was saying that he wants to do. He says, I don't want to fight this Yuddha. I cannot kill my own people. So much bad will happen if I kill my own relatives. Let them only rule the kingdom and let me go off and become a Jnana Yogi. So Krishna is now trying to tell Arjuna, he has already given him so many other reasons, isn't it? He told him, you are a Kshatriya, so it is your dharma to fight. If you don't fight injustice, then people will classify you as a coward. And even if you go to the forest, if you see Anyaya, because of your Kshatriya nature, you will be bound to fight. So you will not be able to practice Jnana Yoga also properly. So Krishna has given him lot of reasons. Now he is trying to tell Arjuna that whatever result, the outcome that is going to be there for the Jnana Yogis, when they practice Jnana Yoga, you, Arjuna, will get the same result when you perform your karma as karma yoga of fighting in this Dharma Yuddha. We have seen in previous satsangs the story of Jada Bharata. So, Jada Bharata was a Jnana Yogi. So, whatever result Jada Bharata will get, whatever state he will achieve by the pursuit of Jnana Yoga, for a person like Arjuna, he need not do that Jnana Yoga. He will get the same result just by doing Karma Yoga. That is what Krishna is trying to explain to him. So, from this shloka, what we have understood is such a person is called wise. And who it is very important, no? Like if you and I call somebody wise, what is our basis for judgment? We are not anybody great to be able to judge somebody and say that they are wise or not wise. But the enlightened sages are the ones who are having the right ability to judge. So those sages are calling somebody wise. So then there is a lot of value for their words. So if somebody's action is free from karma and somebody's action is not having the idea that the body and Atma are same, such a person has done Karma Yoga, and such a person's Karma Yoga, the Jnana part in that, destroys
Yeah, you did release the book and things like that. When you have Yatan.
So now we will move on to the next shloka. So we have seen here that Krishna is trying to explain to Arjuna, you have to perform Karma Yoga, where you are doing your karma in combination with the right Jnana. Now we move on to the 20th shloka. Here, Krishna is talking further about how such people, because they have given up the attachment to the fruit of the action, although they are doing the action, it is as if they have not done the action at all. So he says, Tyaktva karma phalasangam nityatripto nirashrayah karmanyabhipravrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha. Such people, having done tyaga, having given up attachment to the fruit of their actions, to the karma phala, they are always satisfied. They are always having contentment. And they do not depend, they are nirashraya. They don't depend on external things. If somebody is going to be attached to the fruit of their action, that means they are dependent on an external factor. What is that external factor? The outcome of their action. So if somebody has given up that attachment, that means they are not dependent on that external thing. Such people, despite engaging in activities, they do karma, but it is as if they don't do anything at all. So person who does karma yoga, does actions, does karma, but it is considered as if he has not done the karma. So no papa punya attaches to him. So here the Vyakyatas give the example of a baby kicking the mother. Suppose we know when the child is in the mother's womb, when the baby is growing in the mother's womb, it kicks. Even after the baby is born, many times when the mother tries to pick up the baby or the mother is trying to hold the baby, that baby will kick the mother, or sometimes the baby will hit on the mother's face, right? But these things are ignored. We don't say that's an evil baby, it's a bad baby, isn't it? We say that's a natural tendency of the babies, or the baby doesn't know what it's doing. So it is not given any value, that particular action of the baby. But let us say there's an adult son who grows up and then he's expected to know what he should behave, how he should behave, what he should do, what he should not do. If there's an adult son who starts hitting his mother, then definitely that is condemned, isn't it? Now, the action is the same, physical assault on the mother. But why is it that the baby is forgiven while the adult child is condemned? What is the reason for this? So here the Vyakyatas tell us that whenever any action is done, the intention behind that action is far more important than the action only, right? So whenever we are, so here that intention means that is the jnana part, and the action means the karma part. So in when somebody does karma, okay, in the path of karma yoga, what is the advantage? We don't have to give up our actions. We can just go on doing our actions as usual. And for us, it is natural. All our life, we have been doing actions and actions and actions. In all these janmas, also, we have been doing actions. We have kept on doing actions. So if somebody tells us, don't do actions, just sit quietly in one place, withdraw your senses, and just contemplate on the Lord and do dhyana, it's going to be very difficult for us because that is against our tendencies. So the advantage in karma yoga is we can just keep on doing our actions as usual. But what's the disadvantage here? We will accumulate papa punya if we do just karma. Now, jnana yoga. In jnana yoga, what somebody does, they don't do any action. They just withdraw their senses and they sit quietly. So when they are not doing action, automatically there is no chance of them accumulating papa and punya. So that's the advantage for them. But what is the disadvantage? It is very difficult to sit quietly like that. It is very difficult to control the senses like that. If we just try to close our eyes and sit for 5 minutes and do dhyana, it is how difficult it is. All the thoughts of the world come at that time only to us. All the tasks that we have not done, we remember those tasks at that time only. We think of so many things, our mind wanders here and there. Not just the mind, our senses also, we try to remember different things or we imagine different things. So it is very difficult to control the senses and the mind. That is a disadvantage of jnana. So what is Krishna telling here? He's saying such a person, okay, who is combining both karma and jnana. He's doing karma, but with Atmajnana. He is doing karma, but not for any worldly inferior goal. He is doing the karma with jnana, with Atmajnana, for the superior goal of achieving moksha or for the superior goal of giving pleasure to the Lord. Such a person, he is doing both the karma part and the jnana part. This kind of karma yoga gives the advantage. So you have both karma yoga and jnana yoga benefits. So now because the person is doing the actions, it is not something which is difficult to him. So he has that advantage of the karma yoga. But because he's doing it with jnana, there is no question of papa punya attaching to him because the papa punya is getting burnt by the karma. So doing like this, combining karma with jnana, is the best solution for people like us in this world. So that is why Krishna is advising to Arjuna that do your karma, but do it with jnana, do it for the superior goal, not for any inferior goal. You are very fortunate that you've got this dharma yuddha, which is very rare for a Kshatriya to get. And when you fight in this Dharma Yuddha, you are fighting for a superior goal of establishing Dharma. So when you do that action, you will not find Papa Punya attaching to you. And you are doing it with full knowledge that it is for a superior goal, with knowledge that the body and Atma are different. So there is no question of any Papa Punya attaching to you. And you will definitely get the same benefit as a Jnana Yogi gets. So now that was told to Arjuna in his context. So Arjuna was fighting the battle in Kurukshetra. So for him, his duty was told as fight in the Dharma Yuddha. What about us then? Right? For us, what is our dharma now? That we have to do our actions. We have got this human janma. We have to avoid collecting papa punya in our life. So what we have to do? We have to do our karmas, but along with that, we have to attach jnana to it. So in terms of how we should perform all our work, do all our actions, do every action of ours sincerely. What should be our bhava when we are doing these actions? We should have the bhava that we are serving the Lord. We are doing this for the Lord's pleasure. We are doing it. Even if we can't think that, I want to get moksha by doing this and all that. Even if we are not able to retain that thought, at least we can always try to remember the thought that by doing this, I want to give pleasure to the Lord. Will the Lord feel happy or will he feel sad if I do this action? This can be a wonderful compass for us, right? We all know about magnetic compass, how it always points to the direction of north, isn't it? And that is used by people to find their way when they are stuck up somewhere. When they want to know which direction to go in, which is the north, they come to know by looking at the compass. So what can be the compass for us? When I am doing any action, when I'm going to perform any action, let me think, this action of mine, is it going to give joy to Krishna? Will it give pleasure to Krishna? Will Krishna be happy by this action of mine? You remember in many previous satsangs, we have talked about the concept of anukulya sankalpaha pratikulya varjanam. So what the Lord likes, I will do that. What the Lord dislike, I will give up that. So with this bhava of serving the Lord through my action, I should do all my actions properly. When it comes to our work in terms of earning our livelihood, how much should we have? How much is needed? See, whenever we want to put more effort to earn more, we must remember this thought that I need to earn as much as is enough for me to live a life which is happy enough, which is comfortable enough to allow me to pursue my bhakti. I can't say, oh, it is very bad to have riches and to have all the comforts because I'm not at that level. I'm not at the level of tyaga and doing rigorous tapasya, isn't it? So I need to earn just enough to make myself comfortable enough to practice bhakti. But beyond that, accumulation of more than what is required for me will not be the right kind of actions. So whenever we have a choice, if we are drida about our sadhana, if we have made up our mind that adhyatmic sadhana is the goal of my life, if we have understood the reality that getting moksha is the purpose why I have been given this human birth, if I understand all these things, then there is no question of me hankering to earn more, to have a more comfortable life, to have riches, and to have all possible luxuries in my life. I need to have my necessities. I need to have enough to be able to keep myself and my family comfortable. But beyond that, accumulating wealth is not actually going to be conducive to my spiritual journey. The other day, I was listening in some lecture, somebody was telling that for people who are attached to their worldly goods, Krishna takes care of them. It is said that Krishna takes away those things from them. And then, because that is all gone, somewhere at some point of time, they realize that Lord is the only permanent and Shashvata thing in this world. And they will come closer to the Lord. So, for people who are attached to their wealth, Krishna may take away the wealth to make them turn towards Him. But an interesting thing which the speaker quoted was that if somebody is too much attached to their detachment itself, if there is a person who is detached, who doesn't have worldly desires, and they are feeling proud about that attitude of theirs, if they are attached to their detached attitude, then Krishna will take away that also. How? By giving them wealth. And this, that speaker told, is very visible in the story of Sudama. You remember Sudama's story? We have discussed it and you know of it, I'm sure, before also. You must have heard. So Sudama went to Krishna because his wife told him, we are living in such poverty, our children, we don't have food for the children. Krishna was your friend, and will it be befitting for Krishna that he is so full of Aishwarya and his dear friend is struggling like this? So you go and ask Krishna for wealth, for something to improve our situation. Although Sudama listened to his wife and went, deep in his heart, he didn't have the desire to get wealth. He went because he would have the opportunity to have darshan of Krishna. Sudama was pretty okay with managing his life the way he was living, isn't it? So that Sudama's lifestyle had become so this thing for him that he was detached. But subtly, at the subtle level, in the Sukshma level, he was attached to his detachment. So when he went to Krishna and he met Krishna, he did not ask Krishna that you please give me wealth. He did not ask it. You remember? When he came back, he saw that it had been given. Why did Krishna give that, although he didn't ask for it? Because one was he wanted to help his bhakta, that is there. But also these commentators, the person who was speaking there said that some acharyas have given this commentary that Sudama had this sukshma aham bhava. He was attached to his detachment. So Krishna took away that by giving him wealth, so that in the presence of that wealth, is he still able to stay detached? Does he continue to contemplate on me? And we know that what happened after Sudama came back and he saw all that thing. He allowed his family, his wife, his children to live with all that Aishwarya. But he just used to live in a small hut outside that main house, and he just continued his bhakti and he continued his lifestyle as usual. So, like this, it is told that we need to have enough for our needs, but more than that is not required. It can divert us from the path also. Whatever we have, we should be willing always to share it with others who are in need. That should be our bhava, that should be our attitude. And whatever time we have, other than the basic minimum work that we need to do, we need to spend that time in Krishna Bhakti. We need to spend that time and dedicate it for Atma Chintana. We need to dedicate that time for our Adhyatmik Sadhana. That is the way in which we have to live our life. So if we do all these things, then we are performing our actions, we are doing whatever is our duty, whatever is our karmas, we are performing them. We are doing them with the jnana that Atma and Sharira are different. We are doing them with the jnana that this is not for my pleasure, it is for the Lord's pleasure. We are doing it with the understanding that I don't want any outcome out of this. We are doing it with the understanding that I have to perform this because it is my role in life. So, with that jnana, when we do all our karmas, then we will be able to go through our life without accumulating papa punya, and Krishna will take us further to moksha. So, to explain this concept of such people who perform actions but don't get entangled by them, there is one story which we can, think about. And in that story, the same idea is conveyed, because it can be a little tough for us to imagine this, that how can it be happen that you do some action and yet not get entangled by them. So this story is commonly told of Krishna and Durvasa and the gopis. So once what happened is, the gopis of Vrindavan, they performed a vrata, and after performing that vrata, they had to break their upvasa. So they told Krishna that, okay, like this, we have done the vrata and now we want to break the upvasa. Please suggest to us somebody who is, really very good, to whom we can serve the food first, and then we will break our upvasa. Because that is what is told in Dharma Shastra, that whenever we have done fasting, we should be serving somebody else and then we should break our own fast. Even on the day of Dwadashi, like it is told that on Ekadashi day, when we have followed the vrata, then on Dwadashi day, we should actually offer, that special leafy vegetable, which is called Agse Soppu in Kannada, right? We should offer that to the cow. And after that, we should offer food to any guest who comes to our place. We should, in fact, invite people and serve them food, and then we should have the food ourselves. So nowadays, there are no guests who are coming like that, right? So whatever it is, at least to the cow we should offer that soppu and we should eat our food after that. So it is always considered superior. You remember the story of Ambarisha also. When Ambarisha was about to break his fast, then Durvasa had come there and he offered that please come and have the food and then join me in this breaking my upvasa. So like this gopis wanted to, very interestingly, Durvasa is there in this story, but it's in a different context from the Ambarisha story. So the gopis wanted to break their fast and they asked Krishna that whom can we serve the food before we break our fast. So Krishna said, Durvasa Muni is there. He's there just across the Yamuna. You please, he's there in the ashram there. He's doing tapas. You please go and offer the food to him. So what happened? The gopis prepared all the food and they were ready to go. And then they saw that the Yamuna waters were in flood. So the water was too much. They were not able to cross the Yamuna and go. So they again asked Krishna, what should we do? We are not able to go across. So Krishna said, go to Yamuna and tell her that if it is true that Krishna is a brahmachari, then you would give us way to go across to the other side. And the gopis were all very shocked on hearing this statement. They thought in their mind, what is this? Krishna has himself, we know that Krishna is, the love of all of us. Krishna has done Ras Leela with all of us. What is this? Krishna is saying that he is brahmachari. How can it be like this? But they didn't say anything to him. They went there and they told this to Yamuna. If it is true that Krishna is a brahmachari, then please part way and give us way to go. Immediately, Yamuna separated and made a path for them to walk across and go to the other side. They went there. They served Durvasa Rishi the food. First, he said, I will only take little, and he had a small portion. But they insisted. And they said, no, Swami, you please take little more. And we have done all this. We have prepared so much for you. So then Durvasa ate everything what they had brought. They had taken so many items. Durvasa consumed all of it. Okay. Now these gopis, they wanted to go back across the river. So Yamuna had closed now. She had given them way and now it was closed again. So again, they could not cross the river. So they asked Durvasa Muni, what should we do, Durvasa Muni? Please tell us some remedy so that we can cross the Yamuna and go back. So Durvasa Muni told them, go to Yamuna and stand there and tell her that if it is true that Durvasa has not eaten anything today, then you give way to us. They were again shocked. What is this? Right in front of our own eyes, we have seen Durvasa Muni eating everything that we brought for him. And it was so much food. He has eaten everything. Now he's saying he has not eaten. So anyway, they couldn't say anything to him because he is a Muni. They went to the Yamuna and they told that, oh Yamuna, if it is true that today Durvasa has not eaten anything, then please give way for us. And immediately Yamuna separated and gave them a path to go across. So what this means? That the statement of Durvasa was correct. What it meant the first time when Krishna said, I am brahmachari, that also was correct. So these gopis were now confused and they were not able to understand what is happening here. So what they did was, they asked Krishna, after going back, they asked Krishna, what is this Krishna? Please explain to us. So then Krishna explained this same concept to them, that for somebody who is performing actions without attachment to them, for somebody who is performing an action without a desire for a particular outcome, and for somebody who is having clear jnana of the difference between the Sharira and the Atma, and realizes that I am not the Sharira, I am the Atma. For such a person, whatever action he does not attach itself to him. So such a person, it is equivalent to him not having done that action at all. So such a person does the actions but does not get entangled by them. Such a person is not counted as having done that action. That is why Krishna may have performed Ras Leela with all the gopis, but he is eternally a brahmachari. Krishna, of course, is totally different. He is Paramatma himself. And we have already seen multiple times that for Paramatma, for the Lord, there is no question of karma attaching at any point of time. Right? But who is more significant here? Durvasa. Durvasa was a Muni. He is not Paramatma. He is not even avatara of the Lord. He is a Muni. He is somebody who has reached that sthana of a Muni. Manana Shilasya Yasya Muni. Somebody who is constantly engaged in contemplation of the Lord is a Muni. So what is that stage of Durvasa? That he is doing that action. He had eaten, but how he had performed that action of eating, with the awareness that I, this body, am different from the Atma. He had done it without desire for enjoyment of that food. And because of those two reasons, although he ate the food, it was as if he had not eaten. So that is exactly what Krishna is telling here, that people who do their actions in such a way, people who have given up attachment to the fruit of the action, people who are not dependent on the outcome of their action, such kind of people, although they engage in karma, that karma doesn't get counted against them. And this is the level to which we have to also attain. We have to try and make an attempt to reach this level. So let us pray that Krishna will bless us with the ability to do this. And let us spend as much time as we can in bhakti to the Lord, in doing Atma Chintan and thinking about adopting these aspects in our life. So we've reached the end of our time. Let us offer Kritagnyata, let us offer gratitude at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru for inspiring us to start and join this satsang. And let us pray for their blessings and grace to always be on us. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. And we will meet again next Thursday as usual. Namaskar.